Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. We're just going to wait about a minute or two to let everyone trickle in who's joining us, and then we'll get started with our panel discussion today. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So I want to welcome everyone to our panel discussion on campus climate, diversity, and inclusion at Cal Poly. We're very excited to virtually host you all today and share more about the role diversity and inclusion plays on our campus and in our community. My name is Bea Mwakikau. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the interim director of the Cross Cultural Centers. We're going to begin with a panel discussion with incredible staff, faculty, and students, and then open it up for a Q&A. You can use the Q&A button at the bottom of the page to send your questions, and we will answer them at the end of the panel. So I'm going to kick it off by asking our panelists, starting with Jennifer, if you could please introduce yourself with your name, your pronouns, your role or major on campus, and why diversity and inclusion are essential values in the work you do or how you lead.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here this evening. I'm Dr. Jennifer Teramoto Pedrati. I use pronouns she, her, and hers, and my title is Associate Dean for Diversity and Curriculum in the College of Liberal Arts. I've been at Cal Poly since 2003 and have seen a lot of changes happen, especially recently with regard to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've always done work in this area, but this is actually the first time that I've ever had the word diversity in a title that I've had as a part of my job. And I say that partly because I think we don't have to have those words in our titles in order to do this really important work on this campus. For me, I think education is really a great equalizer. I know it has been for my family. My father's a first-generation college student and was able to really make some big changes for our family because of that. So I think that when we're in an educational setting like this, equity is incredibly important in terms of making things accessible to all kinds of different students so we can actually have a diverse student body and an inclusive campus as well. So professionally, it's important for those reasons. And, personally, I think just because, there are people in my family, specifically the Japanese American side of my family, that wouldn't have been able to be on campus in the way that I am or in the type of role that I'm in now, generations back. And so I think that it's really important for me to use the voice that I have on this campus and in the role that I get to be in at present, partially for folks who don't have as loud a voice, who in the past weren't able to have a voice at these kinds of tables. So personally, it's really important to me to make sure that I'm able to help folks get their voices heard in different spheres out there.
Hi everyone, my name is Capriel Ko. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a third-year psych major, double minoring in law and society, as well as child development. And I am actually a peer mentor on this campus for the TRIO Achievers program. And I was the cross-cultural outreach coordinator for Open House this year. In my work as a peer mentor, specifically for TRIO, I work with low-income, first generation, and also students with disabilities. And I think that diversity and inclusion are so important in the work that I do because a lot of students aren't given the opportunities to succeed in college that others are. And a big part of my job is making sure that I provide them with the resources and the plans to make sure that they do succeed and have a good chance of feeling comfortable on this campus. And I think that that's a huge part of what I want my personal mission to be. I know that when I came onto this predominantly white institution, I felt really scared and out of place. And I think that for me to be able to give a more welcoming experience to students that I meet is actually really important.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Jamie Patton. I serve as Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs with a focus on diversity and inclusion. I've been here for 2 years and I've found many similarities between Cal Poly and my undergraduate experience, and I'm humbled to serve in this role. My role is really to help cultivate a healthy campus climate where everyone can be their unique and authentic self. In addition, my work with university partners across campus is to make sure that everyone feels welcome. That's truly at the heart and soul of what I do within Student Affairs. I help to pass on the message of our Office of University Diversity and Inclusion that diversity truly is a community of people who are made up of different social identities. And those identities are limitless. They include, but are not limited to, age, disability, gender, gender identity, national origin, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and veteran status, and the list goes on and on. Ultimately, it allows, with what we're trying to create is an environment that allows you to live and work with anyone and everyone, which this world today needs and demands. I look forward to you being a Cal Poly Mustang.
What's up, everyone? My name is Juan Perez, and my pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a business major, and I'm concentrating in entrepreneurship. And I've done a lot of roles, or been a lot of roles in Cal Poly, and I've taken on a lot of leadership positions. And the number one thing that I realized that really holds us back, that makes diversity and inclusion so valuable, is that it takes away fear from students, like fear to step up and lead, fear to succeed in school, and the fear to go see your teacher, your professor, their TA. And so I believe that once we have a school that's truly diverse and inclusive to everyone, everyone is just going to be able to succeed at a higher level. And that's why I'm glad to be here on this panel today, because everyone is striving for that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dean Wendt. I'm the Dean of the College of Science and Mathematics, and I'm so pleased and honored to be here participating in this panel with these incredible folks. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a first-generation student, and I was a prospective Cal Poly student at one time many years ago, so I love to talk to prospective students. And Bea, you asked, why are diversity and inclusion essential values in the work that I do? And well, as the Dean of the College of Science and Mathematics, I'm quite simply charged with the responsibility of creating a productive learning environment for all Cal Poly students. And I know that for students from historically marginalized groups, that it can be more challenging. And thus, I'm compelled to make diversity and inclusion a central part of my work. I need to make sure that my college and Cal Poly is a place where all students can realize their full potential and discover their dreams. And a second reason is that our students are going to be shaping the future of our country. So it's important that all graduates have empathy and understanding for folks with identities and backgrounds that are different than their own. Cal Poly has to help students become the best citizens possible, and so that we can be the best country and the best world possible. And we can only do that if our students and our graduates understand the value of diversity and inclusion. And so that's why these are such core components of my work as the Dean of the College of Science and Math.
Hi everyone, my name is Jimmy Feldman. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a 5th year ethnic studies major with 2 minors in Asian studies and Chinese studies. I think I have multiple roles around campus as well that have changed from year to year as I am a 5th year. But throughout all of my work, I have noticed that, especially being a mixed race and white passing person on campus, as a leader on campus, it's a very unique position to be in, because a lot of the times, when you are a leader, people do trust what you say when you look like them. So I think I have a very unique position in reaching out to white students specifically, in helping them realize and understand that there are students that go through different struggles, and why that is as well. Underrepresented students struggle for various reasons, and they all, there can be multiple levels of that as well. And coming into college, coming from very different places, around the world, around the state, whatever it may be, you're also understanding your own identity and coming into that and maybe realizing how to name that. And it's just important that other people are going through that journey too, and understanding, realizing just different challenges that students might have. And as was said before, the professions that we're going to eventually be taking on in our life, it's important to understand how we can help each other in our various professions. And that's not like progress that should ever stop.
Thank you all for those amazing answers. As you can see, we have incredibly committed and passionate panelists today who are invested in diversity and inclusion at Cal Poly. So with that, I'd like to ask our panelists the next question regarding what resources or community have been essential to your ability to navigate Cal Poly?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. And I think in the College of Liberal Arts, one thing we're trying really hard to do for new students is to sort of lead them to those communities a little bit earlier in their scholastic career so that they're able to find a group that they can kind of go through things with, et cetera. For me personally, I think I've always tried really hard to develop relationships with other people who are doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And I did that when I was an assistant professor all the way up through my current role. That means different things in different settings. So I've developed strong relationships with places like the cross-cultural centers to make sure that I have colleagues from a variety of different backgrounds, et cetera, within that group and who are very knowledgeable about those types of things as well. I also think that departments like our Department of Ethnic Studies in the College of Liberal Arts or other groups like that have been really instrumental to me personally in terms of developing relationships with people who know about other people who are different from me and who are the same as me. So those kinds of groups are important. I've also sought, membership in other professional organizations and things like that, and participated in groups that are focused on these kinds of efforts as well for that same reason. That's kind of helped me to get an outside look at how other universities are doing different kinds of work, and also, again, to provide that sense of community. And I also think that something that's very important that I hope new students will think about is that it's very good to get some mentors that are similar to yourself in some ways. It's also good to get mentors that are different from you in some ways. And so I've worked with mentors who are very different from me and who can provide kinds of different types of perspectives that have been able to help me navigate just academia a little differently than I might have. And by that, I mean that, having mentors who are a different gender than me, for example, is useful sometimes in seeing how that group kind of works their way through the campus, or who are a different race, et cetera. So I think those are ways that I've been able to kind of figure out where my place is in Cal Poly, and it's allowed me to develop a really diverse network of relationships across the campus over the 17 years I've been here, which has been useful in a lot of ways, and also a really good experience for me personally in terms of having that broader network.
So for me, I think that the biggest thing for navigating Cal Poly was trying to figure out my own identities first. It's just something that I don't think a lot of people consider when coming into college, is how much things are shifting and things are changing in a new environment. And I really had to figure out who I was before I even started to connect with people. And I think that the cross-cultural centers have been a huge part of that. And specifically, Dr. Teramoto Pedrati teaches an intergroup dialogues class. And that was the catalyst that really helped me figure out where I wanted to be and how strong I wanted to feel about my own identities. And then I joined the Cross-Cultural Experience WOW Leaders, and that is just such an amazing program. And for you freshmen listening, I really hope that you are involved in that, because it is such an amazing community. Cal Poly has a community of people of color that I have not seen on other campuses, and I think that ability to connect people of different identities is just so strong. And that's where I really found my place and found people who challenged me, but also were there to validate my experiences on this campus when things happen that are challenging for me, or when I feel invalidated in classes. And I think that that community is so important throughout your college experience. So definitely the cross-cultural centers. You will always see me in the multicultural center. I'm always there with all of my friends. It just creates a family dynamic that is so unique for this campus, and it's a resource that I don't think that I could be on Cal Poly without.
So one of the resources that I'm aware of, and I really appreciate the opportunity in my current role, and my role is to really help to build bridges. So to help everyone navigate the shock or the culture shock of coming to Cal Poly. So we do a program within Week of Welcome called Diversity EU. It's coupled with a session called Building Bridges. And essentially it's inviting everyone into this conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's helping to, in some ways, provide everyone with the language, the terms, and the opportunities to seek to understand diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what I love about Cal Poly and the communities and the resources that some have been discussed, like the intergroup dialogues, it starts there with Week of Welcome, but then it goes to intergroup dialogues, and you have opportunities to take courses, not just in ethnic studies, but we're working with our faculty to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout all of our colleges. And so we're equipping all of our students, again, to start with learning, again, a basic language around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then you'll see it interweaved within all 4 years or 5 years of your Cal Poly experience. So it doesn't fall on your shoulders. I mentioned in my introduction that Cal Poly reminded me much of my undergraduate institution, but the one way it doesn't is that it is intertwined and it's talked about in multiple levels. When I was an undergraduate student, only 5 years ago, that was a joke. But when I was an undergraduate student many years ago, it wasn't a part of the conversation. And many of the students, we had to carry the burden of educating other students about diversity, equity, and inclusion. What I can say about the commitment that Cal Poly has is that it's being talked about on the highest level of the institution, and it's reverberating down where everyone is trying to provide a lens or an opportunity for you to engage in the conversation, and it doesn't fall on the shoulders of just our students of color.
For me, it would be orientation. And I'm not saying this because Jamie is my boss, but I really enjoyed CORE. CORE is a program in the beginning that's kind of paired with WOW that helps you be introduced to all of these sayings or the resources on campus. And most importantly, what helped me most was mentors. So I learned from my mentor, Brandon, who was one of my CORE leaders, actually. He really helped me navigate through all the little questions I had as a freshman, like no one else could. And they're both personal and academic level. And he's someone that I look up to. And at CORE, we're trying to get people to be team leaders who are people to look up to help these freshmen or transfer students go into Cal Poly with a free mind, a mind that thinks that they can succeed and have support behind them. So I think CORE or any orientation program really helps. The CCE has been great, and I was also in that. And it's always just amazing to see that there's actually a community building where there wasn't.
Yeah, so folks have talked a lot about the resources and communities that have been essential to them. And as the dean of the College of Science and Mathematics, I would say that, for me, and this is, I'm saying this to prospective students to demonstrate, Jamie was talking about the commitment of all levels of the university to building an inclusive and welcoming campus. I have, over the last several years, just listened very carefully to the folks around me, and I've committed to understanding my own privilege and how I've navigated the world in a way that's very different than other folks have navigated this world. And it's been about educating myself to build the empathy for those folks that have identities that are and backgrounds that are different from my own. I need that in order to be a leader, to do work on behalf of all of the students, faculty, and staff here. And I've appreciated and benefited so tremendously from the people around me who have been generous enough to help me understand that. And really from the incredible commitment of this campus through a number of workshops and allyship trainings that I have done and book groups that I've been engaged in through the cross-cultural centers, through the Center for Teaching and Learning, and through our Office of University Diversity and Inclusion. And so as you know, in the position that I am and being who I am, I have just really benefited from the tremendous resources that the university has brought to bear to help build a more inclusive and diverse community.
I think one of the first support systems that I had on campus was the Filipino Cultural Exchange, or PCE. There are many, many different clubs on campus, and there's a lot to choose from, especially with cultural organizations. But being Filipino identified, that was like the first time in my life that I had been around other people who were Filipino who were my age, other than being in the Philippines, because I don't think that counts. But like alongside with that, the Multicultural Center has really been a home to me, like Caprio was saying. And along with that as well, the cross-cultural experience. Back when I was a first year, the cross-cultural experience didn't exist. It was something called OUR, which was more of like a grassroots foundation that the cross-cultural experience grew out of. But as CCE has grown, I've been part of like the changes being made and the trainings that are put on. And I think that's something that's also helped me grow. Teaching is a good way to learn as well. And something that I'm also a part of is Polycultural Weekend. Sorry, I need to clear my throat. So I have been participating since I was a senior in high school. It's when we invite students who are seniors in high school or transfer students looking to come to Cal Poly, and we really give them like a taste of what Cal Poly life is, introduce them to the cultural communities and the resources that we have. So I've been participating every year since then in different levels of participation, and this year I was fortunate enough to be the coordinator. And I think that's also something really special to see so many different cultural communities come together to build something that we care about so much, which is inviting more students of color and underrepresented students to Cal Poly to make sure that we are building an even stronger community from year to year and making sure that students to come do have these resources and it's even stronger than before.
Thank you. Our panelists talked a lot about different programs, communities, so I just want to echo if you have questions about more about what Polycultural Weekend is, more about what the cross-cultural experiences are, core, which are pre and week of welcome options, please feel free to put it in the chat and we'll be sure to give you more details about those things. And the resources that they shared and the communities that they shared are also essential to how we experience our time here, both in the good and difficult moments at Cal Poly. So that really leads me into our next question for the panel, which is if you could speak to what challenges you have experienced in looking to implement or expand diversity and inclusion at Cal Poly.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. It's good to be able to look for challenges and obstacles as well, so you can figure out ways to work around them. I think for me, any work within diversity, equity, and inclusion has its challenges, and there's usually some different kinds of obstacles you run into. And I think that the folks that I know who do this work on this campus, and just leaders on this campus in general, are sort of imbued by the fact that we're going to find ways to make things diverse, equitable, and inclusive, regardless of those kinds of challenges. I think for me, the way that I've approached that most often in all of my different roles, even when I was a student and a grad student, is to think a little bit about the sphere of influence that I have. Today, I have a much larger sphere of influence in terms of being able to speak to other associate deans or the provost, et cetera. But even when I was a student, I had the ability to speak to the other students in my class or to choose to do a project that was focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, or a presentation, even if that wasn't the topic of the class. So I think kind of keeping that sphere of influence in mind and remembering that just even making small changes do lead into bigger changes. I also think that, lots of times I think people in the past perhaps, and maybe someday today too, to some extent, I think people think sometimes that diversity, equity, and inclusion are kind of relegated to certain populations, maybe underrepresented populations or minority populations. And the reality is that diversity, equity, and inclusion impact the entire population. And so I think that, you know, if folks are not seeing it in that way, if they're seeing it as just a small part of something that's going on, that's much more difficult than to get across the importance of things, as opposed to folks understanding that it really needs to be a priority for everyone. I'm a psychologist in terms of my training, and so there are multiple articles, all sorts of research that talk about the benefits of diversity and having a diverse set of friendships, a diverse set of relationships in general, across a variety of different kinds of situations. And so I think that when people don't understand some of those pieces, we need to kind of sit down and make sure that people are educated to understand how important this is for everyone, not only for certain populations.
I think that for me, specifically as a student of color on campus, sometimes it's hard to get your voice heard. And I think that that is an obstacle that I've come up with a lot and have struggled with too. But I think that going off of the spheres of influence that Dr. Pedrotti was talking about, I think that the community that I found within the cross-cultural centers and even in classes as well have helped me to create connections of allies and other people to kind of come together. And if I want something to be heard, there's other voices to help me amplify it. And so I think that that has been something that has definitely been something that I've had to learn about and learn how to navigate as well. But also I think that funding is really hard, specifically with my peer mentor job. I think that we really have to figure out what we want to put on in order to benefit the students the most. So some like small fun activities might have to go out the window in order to promote professional workshops or things like that that will hopefully benefit the students beyond just that single event. And so I think that those are the two biggest places that I've found challenges. And there's still challenges that I have to work through today too.
I think for me, one of the greatest challenges or challenges that we have is that our strength and that we are over 20,000 students, and when you add in faculty and staff, we're an organization and/or community of over 30,000. And unfortunately, everybody has their own opinion, and every now and again, there's an incident, a racist incident, or an incident that happens, and it's a small community of individuals that are doing the act. And a lot of times, once we get an opportunity to talk with them about the impact, we often talk about their intent, but the impact on our community, because we talk so much about being Mustangs United and love, empathy, respect. That is an expectation for the whole campus. One of the things that encouraged me through that challenge of having a few people who do those things is that we haven't wavered in our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We haven't stopped the acts and/or the things that we're doing to change the community, be it both on all levels, faculty, staff, and students. So just looking at our commitment in the midst of sometimes having setbacks and having opportunities where you can say, you know what, no matter what we do, it's just going to be a part of this university's experience. But I still hold true, and I'm firm in the 3 years that I've been here, that we will continue to try to be one of the most diverse and dynamic institutions in the world.
My first year, I had a chance to be the president of my dorm, and that was going to be TRIO, CP Scholars, and EOP. So we had essentially a lot of minority students at our dorm. And I think the number one thing that I experienced that I had a challenge with was really like, how do you empower these underprivileged students to speak out and to say their voice and to not be fearful? And that's a hard question, like something just difficult to take upon. And it's something that a lot of communities try to tackle, and it's a lot of the resources that we're currently talking about trying to get in. And so I think that just the very fact of trying to empower someone to take charge is very challenging. But I think, and I know that Cal Poly is figuring it out little by little.
Yeah, these are definitely incremental improvements, but I think that it is really a deep commitment that I hope that you're hearing from these folks. And when I think about the challenges that I've experienced looking to implement and expand diversity and inclusion in Cal Poly, one of the primary things I'm responsible for as a dean is recruiting new faculty and staff and students to the university. And we recently had a campus climate survey called CPX, and we had very large response rates. 40% of our students responded to this, and over 60% of faculty and 60% of staff responded to the CPX study, this campus climate study. And what it said in no uncertain terms is that our campus climate is not as welcoming and is less welcoming for folks from historically marginalized and oppressed groups. And like I said, a central part of my job is to recruit and retain faculty, staff, and students. And so a critical area for growth here is how we increase this compositional diversity that I think is really important to us becoming a better institution. And it's really a challenge to do that, knowing that, we have these climate challenges that some of these folks here have clearly talked about and that the data absolutely show for our campus. But the one positive result that came out of this CPX survey, this campus climate survey, is that the data showed that for folks that are like me, that we recognize as a whole that our campus climate is more stressful on people from historically marginalized groups. And I think that is such an important and critical step in making our campus climate more inclusive and more welcoming.
I think one of the biggest challenges that I've personally gone through, definitely like Priya was saying, like funding is a really big issue in terms of like programming, as well as like space on campus, physical space to like build different centers to support different affinity groups. But something that's like very personal to me is performative allyship. And I see that with a lot of like students who I work with in different programs like around campus and stuff. And unfortunately what happens is like, people are hyping you up with the work that you do and saying like, yes, that's so cool, that's so great, but you do it over there. Or they say like, yes, I'm with you. And as soon as you need like students to mobilize, like they're gone. So I think trying to find ways to make students care. And it's also very frustrating when the work that you're doing does benefit all students, and it definitely benefits kind of like the equity aspect of we're trying to elevate the students who don't have the resources to be successful because the system is not built for students like us. But I think also like a really big problem is having students of color do a lot of the work around campus and then like their work gets taken and they're never credited. And this is something that like a lot of areas around campus do, and like we need to be better about crediting our students and like also paying our students, which that's like a really big kind of systemic thing that we need to work on. But I think something that is more immediately achievable is making sure that everyone knows like this is the work that this person did. They like put their soul into this work and like you need to pay attention to it, and here's why. And it's just something that like really gets to me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I think that it's really important to acknowledge the challenges that we face in the process of change making, especially when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion on a campus like Cal Poly. So thank you all for your honest answers and really sharing that. And I'd also like to move us and talk a little bit about what have been the most significant improvements that you've seen regarding diversity and inclusion at Cal Poly.
Yeah, so I personally am really excited about the time we're in right now. I mentioned to you before that I've been here since 2003, so 17 years. And I think we've seen some kind of ebbs and flows in terms of how diversity, equity, and inclusion has been implemented on our campus. But in the past few years, I've seen more positions created, actual funding that is associated with these types of positions, and other types of changes like that that have shown the real commitment that the institution has towards these efforts. And unsurprisingly, as those things have been put in place, we've been able to move a little bit further along and move faster as well. So positions like my own, I'm the inaugural Associate Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Curriculum within the College of Liberal Arts. That didn't used to be a position just a few years ago. And having someone in each of the colleges that's dedicated to those types of efforts means that that's on someone's accountability as well. So someone is responsible for those efforts and has to show that they're moving forward in those types of things. So positions like that are huge. I also think that other kinds of things like, just a few years ago, we didn't used to require diversity statements for our faculty when we hired them. And now we require a diversity statement for every single applicant who applies for a professor position on campus. And I think that, I've gotten to see the benefits of that when I've been a part of search committees, and also just in hearing from department chairs and other faculty and talking about how those types of statements allow them to kind of pick through and find out who's really genuine about their efforts in those areas and who has a better understanding that can add to our university. So things like that are important. Dean Wendt mentioned a little bit about some of the recruitment kinds of issues that we focused or that we've had on this campus in the past. And more recently, we've, in the College of Liberal Arts, did a cluster hire that was focused on equity and diversity and inclusion, where we asked for this to be considered as part of why we would hire someone. So we asked for someone who was able to have curricular coverage in areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and who had experience with those kinds of things in their own career. This past year, we expanded that to the entire university, where the university ran a diversity cluster search. And in looking at the data, what we see is not only did we get more demographic diversity in terms of the faculty that we hired, but we also got more diversity across the entire applicant pool. And even in colleges that didn't necessarily participate in some of these activities, we still saw more applicants who were traditionally underrepresented in those pools. So, I think that it sometimes takes a little time to see those types of changes, but I know since I've been in my role, I've seen great changes in this university as a whole and our college in particular, moving forward to make changes so that we're actually trying to kind of live out some of these ideals that we've espoused for quite some time. I think we're only at the beginning as well. And so I know in our college, our next step is to think about doing a thematic cluster hire where we focus on making sure that faculty who come into our college are focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion in terms of their scholastic background and things like that, but also that they're focused on a particular theme so that they can teach students from all different backgrounds. And the beauty of that is, I think, is that it's not just to focus on numbers in that way. We're not trying to get a certain number of this and a certain number of that. We're trying to get 100% of people who understand why DEI work is important and who can focus on that in their jobs in the classroom and outside. So those are some examples.
I think that for me, some of the most significant improvements have been opening more conversations surrounding our campus climate, kind of even like this panel. I think that during my freshman year, I didn't involve myself in enough conversations that surrounded identity and how being a person of color or even a target identity itself is hard on this campus. And so I think that with the opening of conversations and dialogues that the cross-cultural centers put on, such as like identity and the Crossroads dialogue, those dialogues are so important in making sure that students feel heard and validated, and also, like Juan was saying, feel empowered. I think that that is such an important way for students to feel validated and empowered to speak if they feel like other students are also experiencing the exact same things or something similar. And I keep plugging the class, but intergroup dialogues, I'm a facilitator for it right now. And I think that opening up conversations like that about white privilege and also just privilege amongst racial identities as well is something that students who are in high school may not have had a conversation about. And I think coming into college, it's so important that we breach these topics before entering the real world, where these conversations need to be had in a professional setting. And so those are the most significant things. And they've also empowered, right now we're going through ASI elections, and some of our friends have created a coalition of love. And they are such amazing and empowering students of color. And they are basically what I think of when I think of empowered students. They just really want to make changes, and I've never seen a campaign like them so far on our campus, and I'm so proud of them for making that something that some of us can look up to.
For me, I would say one of the most significant things that have happened in my time, and that really speaks to a question that we have, is we do have a session where we invite all students during Week of Welcome to participate in a conversation of identity, equity, and inclusion. And we want them to be able to really be able to see it on their terms, and then reach out and understand and seek to understand other cultures and understand different concepts like privilege and or marginalization, or what is a microaggression, intent versus impact. So we do have things, and I talked about it earlier, but we have one of the most significant things is how we continue to find ways to interweave diversity, equity, and inclusion in the conversation. It's just not a one part conversation and or just one visit to one office, but it is really truly being embedded into the fabric of Learn by Doing, and being embedded into the Cal Poly Mustang experience. So we talk about being ready day one, and that's one of the things that we are hopeful to help you with all of our students, no matter what their identities are. And again, try to relieve some of the burden of our student of color or our minoritized students to have to lead that conversation. We're finding ways to help everyone be prepared to engage from the onset of stepping on our campus.
I think one for me is the rise of minority leaders on campus. It was said before, the Coalition of Love. I reached out to Manu when I saw that he ran, and I offered him like marketing tips, because like we just kind of need to stick together and offer like our own services and helps to each other, so that we're able to grow this like movement really. And it's amazing what they're doing. And I think secondly also is funding for the school. This past quarter, I believe they passed like funding for all of the programs in the CCC, I believe. So I think that that's just like a starting point that is more technical, but I think behind that we have a lot more like empathy and emotion and momentum going behind it, pushing it forward and allowing us to find people like Jamie and Bea that are helping students find their way on campus, and I just think it's amazing.
Yeah, a lot of great things have been highlighted here, and so I don't want to duplicate what folks have already said, but you know, when I think about the most significant improvements I've seen, I can go back quite a ways, because I was a student here in the early 90s. And I can tell you, and I came back in 2002 as an assistant professor here, and I've seen improvements over all of those times. I've seen improvements in the last 5 years, and one of the big things that's happened, and Dr. Pedrati talked about this, you know, we have these positions within the colleges, we have deans that are focused on inclusion and equity. We have committees now that are focused on inclusion and equity, both in the College of Science and Mathematics, and then within each of the departments in our area. And these are departments like math and statistics and you know, biochemistry. And so these are the faculty and staff across the college are all thinking and acting to promote inclusion and equity and remove barriers for success for our students, faculty, and staff. And when I think back, you know, when I was a student here, I can tell you, you know, Dr. Patton talked about diversity flashpoints that happen on campus. And when a diversity flashpoint happens now, there's a huge reaction to it. There's a reaction from our students, there's a reaction from our staff, and there's a reaction from our faculty when something like that happens. And to me, even though that's a very tense and a, there's a contention around it, that reaction to me is positive. And that to me shows that there is genuine improvement. And so it's really important that we see these kinds of reactions when there are those flashpoints. And I've also seen a change because I do this a lot, in the faculty that we've been able to recruit. So in the 3 years that I've been the dean, we've hired 14 new faculty into my college. And I can tell you that the diversity of those applicant pools, that is the people who are actually applying that want to come to Cal Poly, and the people we interview, and then the people that arrive, is so vastly different than the historical demographics within our college. And to me, when you talk about improvement, that indicates to me that these people are choosing to spend their careers here, and they're making a commitment, they're placing trust in us as a community, just like you will as a student. You're placing trust in us that this is a place where you can come and be successful. And for me, that there's just, that speaks to the fact that there really is genuine improvement that's happened within our community. And it doesn't mean we don't have a long way to go. So don't get me wrong. It is a ongoing commitment that is deep, that has to continue. We won't ever get there, but we're making changes.
I think that even with, like, as was being said, like the kind of adversities that we've faced at the university, no matter how small or large they are, the problems that we face kind of give reasons for students of color and underrepresented students to come together to have a common cause. It's like a common anger, which turns into a common passion for change, which I think is like really special to Cal Poly. And I think it's something that like I'm really gonna miss once I leave. But I think even though like those problems exist, like we see that students are becoming leaders in a lot of different parts of campus. And that's really important because like leaders inspire leaders, and the people who they're mentoring will want to follow in their footsteps, and that's going to spread it throughout campus. So it's not just in places like the College of Liberal Arts or like ethnic studies, because that's like literally what we do, but we see it in like STEM fields, which it's like more uncommon for folks to see that. But I think with just like different events that students put on as well, like the Students of Color Summit, which unfortunately is supposed to happen in the spring, but it's something that we've been able to enjoy, and like teach-ins from the College of Liberal Arts, different little sessions that we get to see snippets of like different types of education from different parts around campus. And it's really eye-opening to see different students engaging with it, even if it is just for extra credit, because you never know what you're going to learn for that. And just like different student-led things, original women's narratives, like from the Gender Equity Center is really important. And then we have like really fun events like Lantern Festival, and you see like everyone coming together on campus, and like just seeing that continue is really special, because like it's such small exchanges that really mean a lot.
Thank you all. I'm actually going to move us into the Q&A because we have some really great questions that I want to make sure we get to before we run out of time. And our last question was, I feel like has already been answered by all of the other panelists in regard to what is one thing we'd want you to know. I hope they shared many things that we want you to know to make sure that you know you belong at Cal Poly, you'll have community here, and there are so many resources for you. We've gotten a lot of questions actually about the College of Engineering. So in terms of diversity and inclusion within the College of Engineering, I can share a little bit about what I know, and then if any of the panelists want to add, and that there are a lot of different organizations and efforts within the College of Engineering regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are organizations like the Multicultural Engineering Program, Women's Engineering Program, the National Black Society of Engineers, There's also a multicultural engineering program. So there's actually academic advisors who focus on multicultural advising for students and underrepresented students. There's a Society for Hispanic Professional Engineers. So there's a lot of things happening within student community engagement within the College of Engineering to ensure that students are finding community within that major, and diversity and inclusion is a priority within the college. I don't know if any students are engineering majors or any other professionals want to add to that question. Great.
My best friend is a mechanical engineer. So although I'm not engineer, he speaks upon those clubs and just says like all the amazing things that they're currently doing, and that he truly feels at home in engineering. And although it's like not as diverse as he would want it to be, he knows that he's still getting the best education and the people are trying to understand his story. And I think that's very powerful. And I think that that's happening in every college. But just wanted to make sure that they know that it's happening in engineering too.
Great, thank you. There was also a question that I wanted to direct to the students, if you all wanted to answer it, regarding during WOW days and Week of Welcome in general, if you ever felt any challenges or if you felt fear around entering a predominantly white institution, and then maybe how you navigated that.
I don't know if we're going in the same order, but I know that definitely when I went through slow days and WOW, I was honestly very scared. And I think that was something that I had to confront because I wasn't a part of the cross-cultural experience. And that was actually, my freshman year was the pilot year of the program. So I didn't know about what it was. But I think that it is very real if you do feel uncomfortable or even sometimes isolated on our campus when you first come on. But I think also something that a family friend told me before I came to college was the people you are seeking you. And I really had to repeat that in my head because I think that there are so many people on campus that you are going to click with and so many people you won't. And I think if those people don't click with you, then maybe they're not the people that you are seeking to be with. And I really had to try and kind of put that into my mind and put that into perspective because college is super daunting. I'm an introvert by nature, and I really was uncomfortable kind of going out and talking to people and even just saying, hi, my name's Capriel, like I hope that we can be friends. And I think that trying to push myself to do that and also realizing that there's so much growth in even just saying that, even if it's not a positive experience, there's growth in those experiences as well. And you learn just how to be a person on this campus, especially as a minority, and learn how to be stronger, I think is the biggest thing. I don't know if that answered the question, but.
Just to add on to that, the first time that I came to Slow Days, I actually went to the housing department and asked for a refund because I wanted to drop out and go to Fresno because I knew that Fresno had a bigger Latino population. And right after I called my agriculture teacher and I asked her about the decision, and she said, no way you're going to go to Cal Poly because you were meant to be there and no one's going to tell you otherwise. So I think that it is scary and it's going to be scary for a long time, but at the same time, like that's what makes people that pick Cal Poly special, is that even though they know that there's struggles ahead, like they're willing to put up with them.
Yeah, I think both of y'all said it really well, but just finding your people is really important, and support can look like a lot of different things, and it's important to figure out what you're seeking. And like Priya was saying, like that hit me too. Like people are going to want to find you too, and you're going to attract like the people that you want to be around.
I also want to add that in the Q&A section, someone asked earlier how they could connect with cultural organizations as an out-of-state student, but I think that's really relevant to us being in a virtual world right now. And this is a big part of it to maybe help you all getting adjusted for Week of Welcome. But I did send a link in that answer to the Polycultural Weekend website, and they've actually created a way for you to have Q&A with those cultural organizations who would have participated, and links to all of their social media. So if you want to do some of that and build some of those connections prior, there are opportunities to do that, and there will be continued opportunities to do that through orientation as well. So just keep an eye out that we are prioritizing building community for you during this time. I want to move into our last question, maybe ask Jamie if you would like to speak to it. We had a question around what has kind of happened on our campus after something that we refer to as a CPX survey. It's short for Cal Poly Experience Survey. It's really a campus climate survey, and maybe how that information has helped us.
Boom. Yes, I'd love to answer. So essentially, we just embarked on a campus climate study called the Campus Cal Poly Experience. But really, that's just a culmination of the hard work that's been happening across our campus, and really started in earnest again back in 2017 with the collective impact process. But what has happened since then? We got the results earlier this year. In 2020, and we are, the Office of University Diversity and Inclusion has engaged with every academic college, has engaged with organizations and units like Student Affairs, Cal Poly, Police Department, Administration of Finance, many divisions across the campus, and now we're engaged in what's called the action planning process, where we're diving into the results and seeing how we can positively affect campus climate. Is it a practice? Is it a procedure? Is it a course that we can offer or not offer? Or are there different aspects in the institution? So essentially, we're in the planning phases of it right now. I believe the larger share out to our campus community will be later this quarter, and we continue to move the needle. But let's be clear, and one of the things that I often say is this work has been happening, and we have many committed faculty and staff members who have been doing this work for many years, and where that just adds to the data and or the stories to really create a systemic and change here at Cal Poly that lasts not just for a fad, but for a lifetime.
Thank you, Jamie. So that's really brought us to the end of our time. We hope that we've been able to share a little bit more about our Cal Poly campus climate, our commitment to diversity and inclusion, and just the incredible community and resources that await you here at Cal Poly. I think some of our students on the panel wanted to share their email with you all in the chat. So if you'd like to reach out to them, they're extending that to you all and ask more questions. And I'll open that to any of the panelists who would like to share their email as well. If you have more questions for us specifically, know that we are all here as resources and support for you. And we hope to see you in the fall. Thank you all so much for joining us, and have a good rest of your evening.